22. And the problem is they still have their medical misinformation policy, which is why I've been so reluctant to bring on our next guest. Let's bring him in now. And it's not because dear Clive de Carle is pushing medical misinformation. It's just because Clive is coming from and I'm loath to say alternative, Clive, because that has been demonized in its own way, hasn't it? Good morning to you, Clive de Carle. How are you?
Good morning, Sonia. Good morning, everybody. Yes, it's a wonderful day. I've never been in this one before.
Never been in this day. Now who said that? That
Maya Angelou.
I think that was one of her last tweets, and I've actually got it, and it's even got the spelling mistake in it, which was so lovely. Or I think she said "the" twice or something. Lovely to have you with us, Clive. How's the weather where you are? Is it treating you well?
Well, it's not awful. There's no wind, so it's quite nice.
You sent me an email last week. We haven't talked to you for a while, and one of the reasons being literally what I've just talked about, this whole idea of medical misinformation on YouTube. So we still have to be careful, but it has loosened up somewhat, and we are open to having a broader conversation about health than we have done previously. My one and only strike came from, I would literally report it on Andrew Bridgen, who was then an MP. He did a talk in the House of Commons and he talked about the jab, and I reported on that, and that was how I got my first strike at YouTube. Fairly egregious, isn't it, that you can't even report on an elected member of parliament talking about the jabs, that you would then get a strike. How has it impacted you, the censorship around the issue of health?
Well, absolutely. You know, I'm unusual in that the government took down my YouTube videos in 2014. That was when I was working with UK Column, and they were exposing government sort of pedophilia or whatever, and so they took me down. I'm still trying to get that site back. Then they took it down again in 2020 when I started talking about vitamin C being the way to stay healthy. So they took me down again. So I'm still trying to get those up.
Can I point this, right? This is your vitamin C, and Clive does not pay me. If I promote something, I promote it because I believe it genuinely works. And last week I was starting the cold thing again that everybody was getting, all the sniffs and everything, all coming in my throat. And I took emergency measures of this. Look at me, didn't get it. I didn't get it. And I also used your immuno supplements as well. Talk to me about your last year, Clive. One of the things that you said was you went to a friend's clinic in Mexico for 10 days. You thought that you were dying.
Yeah. At the beginning of the year, I realized that I was getting some symptoms of ill health. And those symptoms, when I looked at them, other people would have said that was cancer. So I realized that I was in trouble because people started saying to me I was losing weight. And I wanted to say, what were you saying? I was fat before, but then I looked in the mirror one day. I tried to avoid the mirror most of the time. And I suddenly realized I was losing muscle and my sort of skin was sort of hanging off me. And I thought, bloody hell, what's going on? So luckily, I'm surrounded by organic farms and I can eat really, really well. So I didn't think it was that. Then I thought, well, okay, supplementation. Am I getting it wrong? But I'm reasonably good at that. So I thought, no, that's all right too. So there are only 3 stresses that cause illness. I mean, or put it the other way, illness is only caused by 3 stresses. One of them is physical stress. One of them is emotional stress, and the other is chemical stress. Those are the only reasons we get ill, right? So I realized it wasn't chemical stress, because I'm really careful to eat without chemicals, you know? So emotional stress, well, I'd had a lot of business issues. My business virtually collapsed because I teamed up with the wrong person. So there's a bit of that. But I thought, okay, well, I'm addressing that. I'm quite calm and can cope with these things. So what else is it? And I thought, well, physical stress. And the more I thought about it, the more there was no other option as to why I was wasting away. Literally, my body was cannibalizing itself. So I thought, okay, the nervous system, the spine, the neck, perhaps it's got something to do with that. So I went to a chiropractor, Dr. John Bergman, and so I had to go to Mexico. He's got a clinic in the States, near LA as well. And so the first thing that happened is we did live blood work, and I could see the pattern of the cells wasn't healthy, then with live blood work can tell you so much. It's incredible. And I've had it done before, so I could see there was a change. Then we did an X-ray. Now, normally I say to people, I don't like X-rays. They're a bit dangerous. However, in this case, I was super glad that I did it, because when I saw the X-ray, if you'd asked me, how's your spine? I would have said, perfect. Often people have said to me, oh, you stand so straight and stuff. Anyway, on the X-ray, it showed something completely different. My spine was all over the place. And Dr. Bergman said, well, look, I think that's a 40-year-old injury, maybe from skiing or car accident or whatever. Anyway, so I went through a series of adjustments. Now, I thought it would be 10 days. That's all I'd packed for. But I stayed 2 months. And the reason was that it actually took 30 5-minute adjustments over about a 3-week period, when suddenly, like a light bulb, I felt better. And every 2 weeks we'd do another X-ray, and you could see the improvement and the improvement. And the great thing about his practice is it happens in the open. You don't get ushered into a little private room. Everybody is treated in the waiting room in front of everybody, so you can hear what everybody's saying, what John is saying. It was enlightening. And so he's in Mexico for 2 days, then he goes back to the States. So I would drive back with him and spend 2 days at the clinic there, and then 2 days in Mexico, and so on. And in that time, we had like 2 to 3 hours of driving every couple of days. And so I recorded everything he said, which was basically, he says wonderful things and I go, wow. He says more wonderful things and I go, wow. It's just incredible. So I literally got a book out of it, of John's wisdom. And to give you an example, let's say somebody's ill and they don't know what's wrong. Well, let's say that you went to the zoo one day. We've probably all been to the zoo. And generally speaking, the keepers know exactly what food to give the animals, what temperatures should be, how much light they should have, and so on. Now, let's say suddenly you're in the zoo and the zebras and the giraffes are both ill. Loads of them are ill. What would the first thing you'd ask the zookeeper? Surely you'd ask them, what have you been feeding them? Right? They're not well, because in the wild, animals don't normally get any of the diseases that farmed animals get, or indeed humans get. So there's something about food. Now, when did a doctor ever say, could your arthritis be caused by a food that you're eating? Could you be poisoning yourself? And what I've seen over the years is that everybody pretty much is forced to eat poison, to bathe in poison. We're surrounded by the stuff, and very few people, even if they can get organic food, possibly can't afford it. So we're in a bind where the medical profession says, oh, you're low on drugs. No, you're not. I mean, nobody's ever low on a drug. That's not how it works. And so, as you know, Sonia, 42 years ago now, I took an antibiotic, which is a big mistake. And the next thing, I'm in hospital. I can't walk anymore, can't get dressed. And I become type 1 diabetic and a whole host of issues. And the doctor said, well, there's nothing we can do, but we can give you drugs which will help with the pain and so on. And again, I'd say to them, look, I'm not low on a drug, that's not the issue. And after 3 weeks of reading books in hospital, I worked out what had gone wrong, what the antibiotic had done. It had upset my gut, there were issues. And I checked myself out of hospital, got wheeled out in a wheelchair, and I haven't had any serious problems since, basically.
And obviously that's informed so much of why you do what you do. Em is talking about our toxic skies as well. Has to play a part, yes?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're poisoning everything. I would contend that it's possible that the C19 that people got was not an infection, but was poisoning in the water. I think that's quite possible, or from the air.
That is, we have to be so careful in that. Can you imagine the YouTube censors going off like nobody's business right now? Please note that is Clive's position. Okay. But I take your point, because we obviously, I mean, when I was able to talk to you much more freely about this issue, as well as I do, I had so many issues around C19. It was clear about a lot to do with coercive control, about bigger agendas, not just about sort of ushering and digital ID, but there was a lockstep that was taking place around the world. Did you hear me saying about the cyber attack that had happened with this huge study that has taken place? And they'd got this massive data set from all around the world and to do with the C19 jab and cancer. And then it was hit by this huge cyber attack. Because who stands to lose when people like you rise up, Clive?
Well, let's say that you and I figured out the cure for diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is easy. That's a dietary issue. But type 1 is much more difficult. There's a huge industry selling insulin and testing devices and so on, and those are specialist doctors. Now, if we presented Pfizer or somebody with the cure, what would they do? Close down all the factories, tell their shareholders, sorry, we've made a massive loss this year. What are they going to do? So they might offer you so much money or an offer, a threat that you can't refuse or something, and they shut natural products down. Loads of the products I used to sell are now illegal. It's crazy.
I think I saw on your website there are places you can't even send to anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah. Spain, a number of European countries, a Brexit revenge or something, won't let our products in.
I mean, it's extraordinary. Somebody's asking me about some of your technology. Let me just have a look at this, see what this is. Health Freedom UK. Sonia, can you ask Clive if the violet ray machine helped his recovery?
Very difficult to tell. Very difficult to tell. I think what helped my recovery far more was using collagen, creatine, various things to build up muscles. I have a product on the website, which is a vegan amino acid blend, which is incredible for putting muscles back on. And I haven't been doing it. There's so many products, who knows which one to choose, but now I am. And now I look in the mirror, and I'd say I'm 95% back to what I used to look like 1 year before.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. You mentioned two words that have become something of a buzzword. I cannot now go on Instagram without Davina McCall or somebody else telling me about collagen and creatine. And obviously, I've known about these things for a very long time. Why are they suddenly very popular?
Well, it's because people aren't making bone broth anymore. If people were making bone broth, they'd get all the collagen they needed.
Bone broth, I couldn't have that, could I, as a vegetarian? What does it contain?
Well, I was a vegetarian for 25 years until one day when I changed my mind. And I've been eating meat ever since. And I know a lot of vegans, particularly, who had to give up being a vegan. They had to go back to meat again. And suddenly they got their strength back. There's one really famous guy, for like 20 years, he was the face on YouTube pushing raw veg. And after 9 months of having been really ill himself, he admitted on YouTube that actually he'd been eating meat all that time. And he was really sorry for the advice he'd given previously.
No.
Yeah.
This is just awful. This is awful. Yes, go on.
But it happens everywhere. I mean, for instance, 20 years ago, there were a number of cancers that the doctors recognized. Then, about 15 years ago, I read this article saying that several of the colon and bowel cancers have been recategorized as benign tumors or something. And people have been having all these operations because they believed that the tests were 100%. And let me give you another example. I think it's 65% of men who have a PSA test that is in theory too high don't have cancer. But most people have a PSA test, which is ridiculously unreliable, believe, oh my God, it's a death sentence. And cancer is a word, not a sentence.
Right, exactly that. But Clive, it's very difficult when you're as aware of our health and what impacts our health as somebody like you is, right? You can also feel helpless and hopeless, because what can we do about, things that are outside of our control, such as EMF, such as what is happening in our skies? It's very difficult. How can we protect ourselves?
Well, there are lots of ways. I mean, one of the least expensive supplements that exists is iodine. Now, I prefer the least expensive version, which is called Lugol's iodine. And if your thyroid and your breasts, in women, the most iodine is in the thyroid and the breasts, and it fires up. It is the powerhouse of the hormonal system, basically. So if you've got enough iodine in the thyroid, radioactive iodine, which is in the air, has got no place to go, because your iodine receptors are full with the real stuff.
So it repels it.
Well, it's got no place to go. All the slots are filled, so it just floats on by. So, and this is the same in so many ways. If you've got the right raw materials, minerals, vitamins, amino acids, essential fats, to build your body as it should be, our bodies self-repair. We are self-repairing mechanisms. None of us are low on a drug. None of us necessarily need surgery, except in the most absolute emergency situations. Very few people benefit from radiation, but everybody benefits from nutrition, and it's easy. Sunshine, well, vitamin D, if you can't get sunshine in winter. I used to get colds. Every year. Then I started taking vitamin D. That was the only change I made. That was about 20 years ago. I've had one sniffle for one morning once, and I did what you did. I mega dosed with a bit of vitamin C and took some vitamin D, and it ended. It's not difficult to understand how to keep yourself healthy. It really is easy. Let me give you one example as to why everybody pretty much is low on iodine. Now, a few years ago, the video's still up, I think, I got 3 glasses of tap water and with chlorine in. And I got some chlorine indicator drops. You can buy them on eBay for 10 quid. They show you how much chlorine you've got in your swimming pool. So I put a few drops in and it goes bright green, showing chlorine. The next one, I put my fingers in for 5 seconds, put the drops in, doesn't go green. Next one, I got a slice of raw potato, put it in the water for 3 seconds, pulled it out. All the chlorine had gone. The indicator showed no chlorine. Where had it gone? Into my fingers and into the potato. So each time you have a shower or a bath, or drink water or cook in tap water with chlorine in it, it's going into your body. Your pores open up when you're in a hot bath or something, and in everything goes, the soap, the shampoo, whatever. But the problem is with chlorine is it knocks out iodine. So everybody's low on iodine because most of them are bathing or ingesting chlorine one way or another. So what can you do about that? Well, if you run a bath, you can put a teaspoonful or 2 of vitamin C powder, very inexpensive, into the bath before you run it. And you'll notice if you normally smell chlorine in your bathroom, you won't, because it neutralizes it. If you're in fluoridated water areas, buy some borax, genuine borax, put a teaspoonful of that in the bath, and it will neutralize the fluoride. So if you're low on iodine, what happens? Well, your children have a low IQ. People have thyroid issues, and the doctor wants to give them a drug for that. You can get thyroid cancer. The doctors are confused. They say things like, well, look, if you've got a high thyroid, you don't need iodine. This is wrong. They're not taught iodine or minerals. They do 4 half days in a year or something like that on nutrition. They're not taught anything valuable. But if you want to know what the answers are, what happened in 2014 when YouTube took me off the first time, I started a club called secrethealthclub.com. And all the information that they don't want you to know is safe behind a club. Now, initially, the club membership was free. Then I had to take on staff, so I had to make a charge. But even now, it's free if you need it to be. So the cost per year is like 80 quid or something. But if you're on a low budget, email me, Clive at clivedecarle.com, and say how much you can afford. You can have it for that. If you can't afford anything, then you have it for free. This information I've been gathering it now for 11 years. It's from A to Z. So if you've got this problem or that problem, you can look it up, and there are people who are way more knowledgeable about individual areas of health saying what you can do. And it's super simple. There's another section just on supplements. What are they? What do they do? Because we can't put any information on our shop website. We're not allowed to.
It's terrible. First of all, I love that you're doing that, because I hate the idea that health is only available to the wealthy, right? Or people can afford it. So I love that. Thank you for that. And I will put your email address in the description at the end of the stream as well, and should people wish to contact you. Let me ask you this. No Baloney Mahoney says, what does Clive think about colonoscopy?
I wouldn't go for that. When I thought I had cancer, that was it, colon cancer. And I mean, what they suggest is they stick a camera up your ass, and people can get ripped. It's not the safest procedure, a lot of bends and things to go around. And so, you see, I'm not scared of cancer. When I talk about cancer, I spell it with a K for legal reasons. I can't write that word on my website. Cures and cancer are against the law. 2 years in prison if you claim you can cure cancer and you're not a doctor. So
absolutely,
I don't claim
according to the Cancer Act, right?
Exactly, 1939, I think. I read it, funnily enough, and I rang up my legal advisor. I said, do you know that the Cancer Act doesn't cover Northern Ireland? We could open a cancer clinic, natural cancer clinic in Northern Ireland. It's not against the law there. And his reply was, how much do you like living?
And we've talked about this before, because I've always been concerned to a degree about you and because I remember you being demonized in mainstream media press, because obviously these people are terribly compromised. If they're not on the board of big pharmaceuticals, then they're mates with people who are. And so they're all in it together. It's one big club. And I remember them coming after you as well. But I've always had some concerns to a degree about your safety, because you just carried on regardless, which is wonderful, which I love. And even though you've been dealing with your own health issues, but do you ever have concerns about your safety? Because these people don't play.
I don't back off, but I did once when I was working with GC Math, David Noakes and his GC Math product. I was pretty much the first person to publicize it, and I interviewed the inventor. I had loads of interviews, and then I started getting calls from everybody, the inventor, saying, take your videos down immediately because we're all getting death threats. And I thought, okay, well, they're getting death threats. So I took everything down, of course, and people were getting killed. Dr. Bradstreet is the primary example, the first one who got killed over it because he was relating it to autism, and they were having massive success. There are other ways now that are way more successful. If somebody's interested in reversing or helping somebody with autism, the Secret Health Club has got later information because GC Math isn't available. Anyway, I thought, well, they're the big boys. They're going to get the flak. Anyway, then I started getting death threats, people over the phone. And so that was the only time I backed off. But at that point, I was doing a tour in Ireland, Southern Ireland, and there was a woman called Fiona O'Leary and a few others which were protesting outside. Every time I do a talk, they'd ring up the Garda, the police, and say, this man is dangerous. But they knew who she was, so they just laughed it off. They didn't care. Then she'd ring the hotels and try and get me cancelled. And a lot of hotels did cancel me. Then there was one that didn't cancel me. So they did there were 7 people with placards outside, and then they did a bomb threat to clear the building.
Oh, good God. So Clive,
I backed off that. I had to back off.
So how long have you actually been in this? Decades now, right? Yeah, it's a long time. Have you noticed a change, though? Is society becoming more open-minded to anything that isn't allopathic? It is, right?
Oh, definitely. You can tell that because of the press. Probably everybody's read in the press things like vitamin C is synthetic and dangerous. Vitamin D could damage your health. And so whenever they have a hit piece, the Daily Express and the Mail occasionally have one saying, vitamins don't work or something like that. Then you're getting somewhere, because it's so cheap. Drugs are horribly expensive, but vitamins and minerals, relatively speaking, are very inexpensive. I stopped getting colds for a cost of £20, no, £10 a year. That was all it took, because vitamin D is so cheap, so inexpensive. That was all it took. Other people might need to take vitamin C. They might need to take zinc. There are a few things that people with colds generally are lacking. But we're meant to be strong. I don't believe a cold is an infection anyway. I believe it's a vibrational frequency, which one person is having a big detox. Suddenly their temperature is way up high. They're burning off all the bad bacteria. Snot's pouring out like mad. They feel they've just got to rest. And the body's gone into rest and repair mode, parasympathetic. Whereas most people are running on sympathetic dominant. They're in fight or flight all day long, and their bodies can't repair. But when it gets desperate, the body might say, well, fuck this. I'm going to give you a cold whether you want one or not, and get all that toxins out. Because I eat really well, I'm not eating as many toxins as most people are, and I take enough vitamin C and vitamin D to keep my levels up. I think that's why I haven't really had a cold, in years. And everybody's capable of that. The problem is, can you afford it?
Well, now that's what I was going to say. Is everybody able to have that good a diet? Because first of all, I don't buy into the idea that, because a lot of people buy ready meals and everything and all that kind of stuff, whereas obviously I can go to the market, I can get lots of vegetables for pretty much the same price, but those vegetables can go for 4 meals, 4 or 5 meals for the same price as some ready meals. But it is hard, isn't it? We're sort of priced out of good health to a certain degree, aren't we?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
How do we get around that then? If people struggling to eat, how do we get around that?
Okay. Well, my recommendations are, I know you're not into meat, but for those who are into meat, often the very cheapest cuts are the best. Pork spare ribs, probably one of the cheapest cuts out. Belly of pork. You don't have to get the expensive stuff. I think chicken wings, for instance, are way more tasty than any other part. But they take their fiddly, but they're so cheap, incredibly cheap. With vegetables, what I've been doing for years is sprouting. You get, let's say you like bean sprouts, for example, get a tiny amount of mung beans, which grow into bean sprouts, and you get them wet for a day. And I've made videos about it. It's dead easy to sprout stuff, just takes a few days. And suddenly a few seeds that cost you pennies have given you a big jar full of bean sprouts or whatever it is you want to sprout. You can mix a dozen different sprouting seeds together. And unlike the garden centre where they're 20 for £5 or something, you can buy a whole kilo of sprouting seeds that are organic for very, very little money indeed. A kilo of broccoli seeds can keep you going for months. And you've got fresh vegetables. You don't need sunlight. The sprouts, obviously sprout underground initially. They don't need sunlight. You can do it in a cupboard, on a windowsill. It's so easy and cheap. And you can sprout any bean except for kidney beans. Kidney beans are poisonous if they're raw. But every other type of bean you might like, you can sprout them. And now suddenly you've got a living thing. Let's take, if you like hummus or falafel or something, you can get dried chickpeas, soak them. They'll now quadruple in size, if not more. And you've taken something that's dormant, right? That seed has been taking in the sunlight and the nutrition the whole previous year. And now it's ready. It's powerful. It's ready to go. So the moment you sprout it, maybe the vitamin content or the mineral content might have gone up significantly, 50 times, because from dormant, it's now alive, it's living, it's vibrant. And so you can eat for pennies. You might find sprouts incredibly boring, but I have found you can cook them. You can, let's say you want to cook chickpeas, well, you can sprout them first and then cook them, and still make a nice falafel or hummus or whatever it is. There are a lot of ways to actually eat for fairly little money. eating seasonally, obviously, which is what our ancestors had to do.
Exactly. That, which is a major issue, isn't it? And also, I mean, when I made my film, The Business of Cancer, if I remember correctly, it was like 1 in 20 of us were estimated to have cancer in the 1970s. And now it's 1 in 2. So clearly, our society is more sick than ever. With all of this intelligence and all of this knowledge, we are more sick than ever. And that is to do with, it's environmental. It's obviously what we put on, like you say, chemicals, what we eat, what we put in our body, what we put on our body, what is raining down on us, what we're surrounded by, even chemicals and things like carpets, right? It's all around us, isn't it? That's the problem.
It is, but we can recover from virtually everything. I mean, we're a pretty much dominant species on this planet. We are very resilient, super resilient.
Right.
And you see, I don't see cancer as a death sentence. You get it, you can recover. You can rebuild the cells of your body, and I've seen people recover, for decades. It's not hidden. Some people, every doctor has seen what they'd call spontaneous remission. They've all seen it. And once you understand that you are in control, and that just because you've been poisoned doesn't mean you can't unpoison yourself. Vitamin C, great for unpoisoning. So many supplements that are available out there, MSM sulfur, magnesium, all sorts of super important products. And this is going to sound like a terrible advertising ploy, but I put together a box of the 10 most important supplements that I think would change most people's lives. And it's cost, I think, 170 quid. It's a box of 10 supplements. And although it's a 1 month rejuvenation pack, some of the bottles are large enough that they'll probably go on for a few months. But if you can afford that, and I appreciate it's a lot of money, try it for a month. There's a very good chance that you'll find aches and pains have gone away, that your brain fog has lifted, that your heart's not racing, you're not as anxious as you were, your muscle cramps have stopped, twitches, spasms, menstrual cramps. Suddenly, in a month, most people, I would say, are going to notice something. If they're 100% healthy, they might notice nothing. But brain fog lifting is big. People with getting the symptoms of menopause, iodine alone can help that. But iodine, along with the mineral selenium, now you're talking. If you've got cold hands and feet, or people shake your hand, or you're hot, you can balance. It's the thyroid that controls temperature. Thyroid controls the hormones, as we mentioned, particularly when it comes to menopause, which is why the Japanese don't have menopausal symptoms generally. So they get so much iodine in the sea fish and all the seaweed that they eat.
Is that they don't have menopause?
Hardly at all. It wasn't in the dictionary in Japan for years, because it was.
Obviously, these women are stopping menstruating, but what you're saying presumably is they don't have all the attendant issues that we experience in the Western world, right?
Well, with menopause, a lot of women find the hormones are unbalanced, that they've got brain fog, they can't think straight, that their skin's maybe getting dry, maybe they're putting on weight. A number of things that thyroid. You just look up thyroid deficiency problems, and you'll see, you might recognize yourself. Iodine is so important, and it's the number one thing in a way to study, along with magnesium, vitamin C, and vitamin D, and selenium. All these things are in my rejuvenation kit. Now, if somebody says, I can't afford that, but you're a couple or something, split it in two. Don't take half, take all of it in 2 weeks rather than spread it out over 4.
Right.
And share it between 2 people. Because I say, so many people notice the difference, particularly with magnesium. That's where people really notice.
I did. Under your guidance, I was in terrible pain, even struggling to walk at one stage. And you told me to take an emergency dose, and I did, and I followed that, and it did make a difference. I would say now that pain that I experience, I probably get it now maybe twice a year, but I've no plans to have surgery or anything like that. And that's huge difference, because I was suffering on a daily basis. And what I've noticed is that I often get a pain in my hip now when the weather changes. Well, I would imagine that's fairly normal, isn't it?
Well, if it depends. If it's in the winter and you're not getting sunshine, then I would think, well, maybe you're running low on vitamin D, as pretty much
Right,
everybody is in
right,
winter.
right,
If, it could be that you just need a bit more magnesium at certain times of the year, possibly.
right.
But everything works together. Vitamin C makes magnesium work properly. Magnesium works vitamin C work properly. But the thing is, there are things like sugar, right? Now, most of us like sweet food from time to time, and carbohydrates like beer or bread will break down into sugar. But the issue is that for every molecule of sugar that you ingest, you need 50 molecules of magnesium to mop it up.
Wow.
And as most of us are eating more carbs and fruit and sugary stuff than would be natural for our ancestors, we're almost all low on magnesium. We're all stressed. The body responds to stress by burning your magnesium levels up. And then suddenly you get into a panic or something where you run out of magnesium. Your body could have coped with that. It's the difference between a challenge and a problem. You got enough magnesium, it's probably more of a challenge. You run out of magnesium, it's a bloody problem.
Some questions. Ange says, please ask Clive what is best for diverticulitis.
Okay. I would suggest probably bone broth or collagen might be an interesting place to start. Again, you're not going to want to hear this, but a few years ago, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I had this guy come to me, he's had IBS for, I think, 11 or 12 years, and he couldn't go out of the house for more than an hour without what they call disaster trousers happening. Anyway, he tried every diet that he could think of. He'd gone raw vegan, he'd tried everything, exclusion diets, and the very last thing, in absolute desperation, he went raw carnivore for a few days. 3 days, fixed it. And I've got a recording of him. I did a 2-hour interview with him, talking me through it. He said it was those damned vegetables.
Oh.
He stopped eating vegetables for a bit, and his bowel fixed itself. Right? For some reason, he was one of these unusual people that vegetables were upsetting his bowels in some way. So, and this is true for almost any food. If you think you've got a problem with the food, if you can stop it entirely for a while,
right,
few days, few weeks, might even
just
be a few
see,
months.
Right, to see if it is it.
Well, no, lots of people can go back to it again.
Right.
People, they put peanut oil in some of those candy things. So why nobody was allergic to gluten or peanuts when I was young that I ever heard of. Anybody is. Could it be that,
Yes,
so,
good point. Good point. Wake Up viewers are savvy enough to be able to understand exactly what you're saying there. So yes, excellent point. Good point. M says, what does Clive think about microdosing mushroom protocols?
100%, yeah.
Very straightforward. Is that information that people could pick up in the Secret Health Club?
Good point. I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't remember whether I'm very keen on mushrooms in a number of ways, but I can't remember whether there are any good videos about it. But microdosing anything. I've microdosed iboga. That's an interesting one.
Peter could listen to you all day, apparently, and which is lovely. I mean, the amount of people who've, it's always the same old thing. Clive, you must get it all the time. I love his voice. Hear it so often, don't we? I've heard this before. Julie says, what a lovely man, Sonia. Please have him on again. Thank you. And I think as YouTube loosens up, I will be able to have Clive on more, because I really value Clive and have done for many years now. So it's lovely to be able to reconnect with you, Clive. Really, it is. So tell me, what's one thing that we could do today to make a positive health change?
Well, when I was studying cancer survivors 20 odd years ago, I asked them, the ones that survived long term, right? What did you do right? And I was expecting them to say, oh, I took vitamin C or vitamin D or something. Anyway, almost all of them said the same thing. They said, I knew that suddenly I was winning because I became grateful to the problem, right? And so what they'd say to me is, oh, the cancer was horrible. I was suffering and it was terrible. And so much pressure from the relatives to start taking drugs. I didn't want to do that or whatever. And then they suddenly got to the point where they were grateful that it happened. This is what happened with me 40 years ago. You know, I was grateful to the arthritis because I got a career. I woke up, I learned loads of stuff. It became really useful. The worst possible thing often becomes the best thing after a while. So the survivors of cancer would often say, well, I became grateful. I changed my life because I realized everything happens for a reason. I was doing something wrong. They changed, they became grateful, it went away. Then number 2 was forgiveness, forgiving yourself. Because people think, oh, I made these terrible mistakes in my life. No, you didn't. You never made a mistake. You always did what you thought was the best thing to do at the time.
Right.
How stupid that was. We beat ourselves up for mistakes we never actually made. I mean, the price for the mistake is the learning.
Absolutely, it is. Sometimes best way to learn. I'm definitely a school of hard knocks learner, and I don't think there's a problem with that at all. Clive, we could have you on all day. Unfortunately, time doesn't allow us to do that. Reba said, "Thank you, Clive. So interesting indeed. You'll be back with us again soon, won't you, Clive? Now we've reconnected, right?
I hope so. There's so much to talk about, ridiculous amounts."
Julie says, cancer survivor here. Agree, Clive. Thank you. And it's interesting. Julie does it with a K as well. Very, very alert and on top of it all. It's never too late to learn, says Vanessa. Indeed, everybody. This is Clive de Carle. Take good care of yourself, Clive. Lovely to see you again. And lovely
Feel
to hear
free to
your
bleep out the words that were naughty.
It. Take good care of yourself.
Thanks,
Lots of love
Sonia.
to you. Lovely to have you. Thank you, Clive. Have a great week, says M. Great, you have Clive back. I will, I promise. Take care of yourself. Clive de Carle, everybody. Lovely guy. And the thing is, I'm not going to bleep out anything. What I'll do is I'll just take the monetization off of it. I have people who watch me for the slightest thing and then they report me to YouTube.